Welcome back. We are glad you're still with us here on Morning at NTV. Let's swiftly go into our tech note discussion as we wind up this morning's program. I'm joined by Moses Kidega Ogenrwot, the Secretary for Labour and Works at the National Youth Council. Many thanks for making time. I'll straight away, sorry for not allowing you to do the salutations. I'll straight away go into questioning you, not questioning you, but seeking your views rather, on the submission that we had. Minister Christopher Chofa talk about the solutions to the current impasse between the traders and Uganda Revenue Authority, and his tone in trying to ensure that the traders have a demeanor that is acceptable while engaging the president. How important must that be?
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for having me this morning. When I listen to the minister, I am forced to think about an article by Henry Barlow. He did publish an article titled Building a Nation, and he describes two individuals, one who is a permanent secretary, the other who is a driver to the permanent secretary. I think the minister speaks from a point of privilege. I think that his opinions and the way he considers this as a casual conversation and as a casual issue only speaks to the lack of touch with the actual reality. But also importantly is that to sort of vindicate his opinion is the idea that the general state economic policy of this country is more outward looking vis-a-vis the idea of protectionism. We, in an attempt to attract foreign direct investors and all these multinationals, we find ourselves giving them tax waivers, tax incentives, you know, and giving them cheap and affordable labor. But this comes at a cost. I read the URA report of 2022 that did indicate that Uganda avoids to a tune of 6 trillion in tax, tax foregone, rather. That if we were to tax these multinationals, tax these foreign direct investors, we would realize to a tune of 6 trillion. So when you have that revenue gap, then you're forced to look at other means of how to generate this revenue, and that is why we find ourselves trying to deepen the tax base vis-a-vis widening the tax base. Because I think the attempt by URA is to tax the same commodity, the same individual over and over again. I think the idea on principle should be how can they widen the tax base.
That's right.
If we began to tax things like the cattle transactions that we have in this country, I think we would realize a very sufficient revenue to fill in that gap. But also I must say that one of the key tenets of a state is its ability to collect taxes, because tax is a creature of governance. That for a state to be worthy of its name, for a government to be worthy of its name, it must be able to demonstrate its ability to collect taxes, because it is through these taxes that government is able to finance its national development. So to me, it's about finding the balancing act between the interest of the state, which is to realize revenue so that it can finance its development, vis-a-vis the interest of the common person, which is, you know, the idea of protectionism.
That's right.
That as you're doing this, ensure that there is quality services that is visible. And you know, the idea about services is that they must not just be done, but they must be seen to be delivered. So if you have a country where the state of corruption is as it is today, you look at the state of our road network, more so in the metropolitan area of Kampala, you look at the status of the healthcare, where we have 15 women who die giving birth every single day. I think that is going to affect tax compliance, because tax, for someone to feel like the duty and the obligation to pay taxes, they must have a confidence that these taxes will be used in the effective and appropriate manner. For as long as that is not being done, we shall continue to have and witness people being less compliant and avoiding these taxes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that perspective. Very quickly, when it comes to widening and deepening, URA has chosen deepening instead of widening, and of course working under the aegis of government. As a youth leader and one who is at a vantage point when it comes to seeing how youth are involved in economic activity, what are those areas that URA should be looking to in widening the tax base?
Yeah. Yeah, I've just mentioned one of them, which is that, for example, the cattle transactions in this country, I think there is so much transaction. Maybe not so many, because the idea
that is the context.
The idea of generating taxes is not entirely entailed to taxing the young business entrepreneur. It's about where can we find the taxes, irrespective of where it is coming from, young or old. Because at the end of the day, we all benefit from the outcomes and the benefit that we would get to witness if these taxes were used in an appropriate way. So I think the idea is, how would we widen the tax base? One of which is to reduce on the tax incentives that we are giving to all these foreign direct investors who come here, invest, but the capital flight is very high. They come, invest here, but repatriate most of the money back to their home countries. They live here peanuts. So that is a tax gap that URA needs to look into.
Okay, I'm afraid time is not our best ally right now, but because you are the Secretary for Labour and works at the National Youth Council, I would be remiss if I don't ask you about the amendments to the laws that are requiring the National Youth Council to go under the ministry or any other agency, especially in light of the merger narrative for service delivery. Quickly. Yeah,
thank you, Chris. First of all, I have already made myself clear that I believe in a lean government. I believe that government must be frugal and government must be able to cut on its cost of administration.
That's right.
So I cannot come here and say and oppose the idea of trying to rationalize government agencies. So I am personally, or the institution of the National Youth Council is not against the idea of reducing public administration. Our point of departure and contention is to the extent that this process and the way it is being conducted is going to hijack the mandate of the National Youth Council in the aspect of checking government. Because the proposed amendment under, I think, Clause 2 seeks to repeal a section of the National Youth Council Act that enjoins the institution to call for accountability from the executive, to place before the minister the youth scorecard and say, how are we doing on this issue? How are we doing with the issue of access to credit? Now, when you hijack and remove away the powers of the institution to check the executive and to check government and hold it accountable on its promises to the young people, then the institution becomes functus official. It is there, but it cannot operate. It is dead on arrival. So our point of contention is with regards to the autonomy of the institution. We think that the reason and the mischief behind the African Youth Charter and Article 32 of the Constitution is that these were marginalized groups of society historically. So, and that marginalization still exists up to date. So for as long as we still have that gap in terms of empowerment, then these institutions, most of for special interest groups, are very important as to the core of their mandate.
All right. Moses Kidega Ogenrwot, Secretary for Labour and works at the National Youth Council. Many thanks. I'm Chris again. Have yourselves a lovely day.